I put together approximately 35, maybe 37 videotapes, and all the information comes from a book dictated to me by God as his righteous servant, a man described in Isaiah 53, and a man described in chapter 11 of Isaiah, the descendant of David, the twig from a shoot that grows out of the stump of Jesse. And it is a stump because of the vanished and failed ancestral tree of the kings of Judah, the line of Jesus. He cannot be the man of chapter 11. He's not the anointed one. He's not son of David. None of that's true. The other book, that book is called Isaiah 53, The Day of the Lord. And there's about 3 chapters in those particular videotapes that come from the second book that we wrote not too long ago. He dictated to me the story of my life. It's to show you how I fit the verses of Isaiah 53 with regard primarily to suffering, familiar with disease. So that would be wounded, and as it turns out, cancer. But the other words that you find in Isaiah 53, punishment, maltreatment, crushing, bruising, chastising, okay, that is all in God's power. That's all in God's power, all those words. But the books are unpublished, shunned and despised, accounted, afflicted by God, plagued. Nobody understands it. This is so different than the Judaism the Jewish people have been taught. This Messianic era that will never occur. And we know it's not going to occur now once you believe who I am and how you cannot. After the mountain of evidence I have presented that is in those books, just as Moses today would have to say, well, look, I wrote Leviticus. You think I just came up with that? You think I just came up with all this information? That I know how God speaks through an angel and who that angel is? Moses walks by a burning bush that's not consumed. The angel of the Lord's in the bush and God speaks. I'm the one who explained that to you. I shouldn't have to go any further than that. The God says the rabbis, the shepherds, they never listen to my prophet. They think they know everything. Well, I'm going to keep showing that they don't. This is primarily for the people who listen to them and not them. I don't expect them to ever respond. Because by responding, they have to say they've been wrong. Or that's just not what we believe. And so they won't change. The bottom line is they make money on it. That's the bottom line. God had me watch a video of Toby Singer just for this one purpose I'm about to tell you. He said, watch him raise his hand. He raises his hand to do his hair or rub his nose or something, and there's this big, fat gold watch. And this is how you know this is the God of old. He said, look at that. Look at that. I said, well, he does. He died. His skin died, silver died. It might be a silver watch. He said, that's no silver watch. That's just a big, fat gold watch for everyone to see. And he makes his money on Isaiah 53. The guy said, at least that's how he really got going. I don't know. I know he has a radio show. But remember, I'm in the fire of refinement. Everything God does with me is to draw emotions, because I'm going to be emotionless once I get to Israel, for the most part. He'll let me feel what he wants me to feel. But nobody can get under my skin. You can't bother me. Even if I seem like I'm mad, it doesn't carry over to my inside. And I don't think about it any more than while I'm, as they would say today, on a rant, getting on somebody. But I bring his reckoning. I laugh. I tell him, you know what I am, don't you, God? He said, I know you're a lot, man. I said, no, I'm the reckoning. And I am the reckoning. That's what I am. He laughed. Holy Spirit, man. I said, righteous servant, David the shepherd, Elijah, prophet like Moses. I like wrath. What's his name? Wrath. What did he do? He's a reckoning. But anyway, I'm going to go through these early years of mine before God spoke to me. It's chapters 1 through 6. Chapter 7 is God speaks to an atheist, and I've already videotaped that. Walking with God, and something on visions and visuals. So the first chapter, this is what he told me right down birth and tragedy. I was born in Bryan College Station, Texas on February. This shit's in from the Holy Spirit, yes. Like you couldn't ask me before I started. Yes. Oh, this is only for the people who come to believe me. I don't expect anybody who's been viewing these materials and, nobody's really subscribed in a handful to be believed. Again, I can't imagine. I don't know what you people want. I don't know who you think's going to come to do something different. How are you going to know who David is? I mean, according to Judaism, there is no description of him. How are you going to know who he is? All this being presented, and I know Jewish people are seeing it, only 60% of the views are coming from the United States. Now, I don't know if that means 40% is coming from Israel. Probably not. You got Canada, that's a big follower on my WordPress site. And really just all the countries of the world at one time or another have looked at some of this information as I wrote my blog, and the blogs became chapters. But I'm assuming some Jews have heard of what some man is saying he is Moshiach, and they're watching. Well, this is for those who come to believe. The people who want to be the witnesses, the many made righteous. By my knowledge, there are things I can tell you that God would have me say to you. So, this might be bored to tears with others, but it does show suffering, pain, and emotional pain, my background, and just who I am. Not just some kook out here. People say, well, he's hearing voices. Listen, as a lawyer, I don't even do criminal law. I've seen some of these people who hear voices. I promise you. That's a person who should be hearing voices when you just sing them and watch them for a couple of minutes. It's not me. Excuse me. Okay, I was born in Bryan College Station, Texas on February 21st, 1957. And that's interesting because that's the year the first satellite went up. Russia sent up Sputnik, which is really 3 different satellites, and all together they were called Sputnik. That is considered the dawning of the age of the internet. Now, I've asked God, how did you select me? How did I be blessed with this and learning all these things with this crazy life that I've had? And but he won't answer me. He's John Poker, this Poker guy. He's not going to talk. He's not going to change his expression or anything, or me getting an impression that he is. And so I tried to come up with it on my own, and that is where I saw it. I said, because I know how important the internet is to this. It's the only way to get things worldwide, and all the teachings that have come through it. I didn't know, I'm 63. I'm not like the young people who can just text messages without looking at them, and all that. But he's taught me everything. He taught me how to set up Facebook, Twitter, you name it. He would just say, go to your computer, do this, do that. Commanded it and directed to become very good at the computer and, of course, word processing. I'm a regular secretary, except I still henpeck with one finger. I used to. But God says that to show you I have perfect use of this disfigured right arm. It just doesn't have muscle in it, and my shoulder showed. Anyway, I was born in Bryan College, and that's where Texas A&M University is. And my dad was attending Texas A&M when I was born. I graduated from there 22 years later, which is a story in and of itself. So I was born premature in the 7th month of my mom's pregnancy. I was born in February, and there were many complications. My parents were told I would not make it through the night, and they should just take me home. Mind you, this was 63 years ago. The biggest problem was that my insides had not fully formed, and it was impossible for me to take milk. Mammy, my great-grandmother, told my parents, boil rice. Feed him the rice water. It's got all kinds of nutrients and minerals in it. Dad says he threw out a mountain of rice those first few months. And it would not be my last encounter with death. So my dad graduated, and we moved to Metairie, Louisiana. And his first job is an oil and gas geologist. He looks for oil and tries to sell deals to people who can raise money to drill. He gets money up front and a percentage of production once they get their money back. That's what he's done his whole life. And I became, as a lawyer, I became board certified specialist in oil, gas, and mineral law because I had found it so interesting. As a young boy, I became interested. But he rarely had time for it. The other part, I said, okay, well, I was born when the dawning of the internet, so he's got a selection process for 57. And I come from a dysfunctional family. Lots of drinkers, lots of fighters. And on my mom, her grandfather committed suicide. It's tragedy. Earth and tragedy. In the Great Depression, he lost everything. He owned land in what is now downtown Dallas. But then when she was about 4 or 5, her mother went down to the market square in Crockett, Texas, small East Texas town. Everybody has the courthouse in the center of town, and there's streets on either side with stores. She went to the hardware store and purchased rat poison. She hadn't gotten hardly out the door when she opened it and took it herself. Died right there on Main Street in the middle of the day in a little small town. I don't know how long that would have been. My mom's 85 or 6. She was 4 or 5, almost 80 years ago. So I'm sure it was quite an event. And her dad took her and her sister's about 2 years older, to Metairie, and not Metairie, to someplace in Louisiana. But could have been Baton Rouge. And her father became a elevator operator. And you can still find this in Houston when I was at law school. I went to law school downtown Houston, but South Texas College of Law. And at the courthouse, they would have somebody sitting in there on a little stool and with a lever and take you up or down, take everybody up or down. With all the lawyers coming in for the court cases, it was packed. I'm sure they've done away with it by now. But that's what he did. And they found him one day or night. He had taken out a pistol, he shot himself in the head and killed himself. So now she had suicides on both sides of the family. And her father's brother took the 2 girls in. He actually adopted them. And she was about 10 or so, I believe. She's with him out in some shack in East Texas. And, there's not any phone in this place. And he took a shotgun. And I'm sure he'd been drinking there all known for it. And blew his head off right in front of her. I mean, that's all the circumstances I know about it. It doesn't sound like a good scene at all. But it scarred her for life. Okay, we've been taking care of her from the get-go. My father amazes me to no end. What he has done to care for her. See, they knew that was his sweetheart. Eventually, now at 10 years old. That's who he married. And they're both from Crockett, Texas. Small town people. I still take care of them. They've taken care of me for 10 years. Got to me from society. He made me quit law. terminate my law license in Hawaii and Texas, and took me into poverty. I've been in poverty for 13 years until I just now filed for Social Security early. But I give them more than 90% of it to make up for everything they've given me for 10 years, 13 years. While I'm in God's fire of refinement, learning everything I need to know. And I have learned much. There ain't any question. So anyway, this course is right there. It's a family of tragedy. You know, it's a tragedy of losing your entire family in the Holocaust, and you're the only one left. It's not like that. But God says, I just got things as close as I could. He says, I put you in the womb to deceive you, really for just one reason. Well, two reasons. One, it makes you identifiable, but it was so people would pick on you. I wanted people picking on you because that's what happens to young Jewish boys. Just for being Jewish, just for having a disfigurement. People will pick on you. I told him since, I don't even really recall many people saying anything to me. He said, that's because you look like you crawl all over them. He did. And I did. I was always just say something, anything. It's just the way I was just angry inside. And God's taken all that away. But I can still go on a good man. But, and then my mother in the 60s, young people may not know this, that's when, you know, the Woodstock and marijuana, LSD, everything started getting big. And at the same time, doctors were just handing out pills left and right. Valium, painkillers, Percocets, you know, just asking for it. They would write a script. And I know today they put a lockdown on that, but she got heavy into it and drunk all the time. I had to come from school and stay with her. And she became such a different animal, a different person when she drank. She became a little girl. You know, maybe your mom act like that and slobbering and, you know, going there to be Valium dripping out of her mouth with bottled booze by her. So it was an ugly scene. And so I came from a dysfunctional family, so I think God wanted that. And He's there with me from my first year to make sure that I live a life of suffering. He orchestrated many of my wounds. And He's taken me back in vision to see these things. And His visions are one thing you don't pick up in the Bible. When I say Bible, I'm talking about the Jewish Bible, the Hebrew Bible, but not, unless I say otherwise. Which is like when God says, my peoples. If He just says my peoples, He's talking about the Jewish people that says, I mean, He may say the peoples of Moab, or just by the context, He knows the son to another group. But that comes up all the time. So to add to that, she tried to kill herself a few times. And when I was 10, my dad was at a Texas A&M game in Dallas. And I know it was 1967, so I was 10 years old. So I'm very familiar with that particular game. It was against Bear Bryant and Alabama Crimson Tide. And he had coached at Texas A&M. So as you can tell, me and my dad are big Aggie fans and football fans. But I had them shared with me to see those games in Israel. Somehow my coach checked them. He said, we'll get it. I said, we'll get it. He's so funny. I don't know where my sister and brother were, but I heard some noise and I went down about 1 or 2 in the morning, and our stairs curved and there was a little bay window cut out, and I looked down out into the living room and she's wearing newspapers on. And they just sat there watching. They didn't know what to do. And she got down that paper and took out a butcher knife, not a razor blade, a butcher knife, and opened her wrist up. And this happened again years later when I was in high school. She opened her elbow up, and that was god awful. I don't know. But before she bled out, my dad opened that door. I sometimes think she knew he was going to be there. Shane would probably save her, but it didn't look good, and I hated myself trying doing something. Maybe that's why I was so angry. Anyway, because I didn't do anything, I just sat there. I couldn't move. I don't know. I don't even know what I was really thinking, really. But I tell you what it is. It told me how much her uncle blowing his head off must have done to you. That must have really hit you. I had nightmares my whole life, but I was 16 when she did the thing with the knife. But you know what? My dad finally got her. He got her the best psychiatric care in Houston, Texas, and that's big because we got a medical center that's renowned throughout the world. And they put me back together many a time. And she never did that again. And the amazing thing is how different she is in her very advanced old age. I mean, it's like she was never that person of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. I don't know how my dad survived it. I'd have never stayed. I'd have taken the kids and said, try to find us. But he's not out there. I've never seen two people who love each other so much. It's crazy. But anyway, I was married for 20 years and we weren't like that at all. I finally divorced for irreconcilable differences. Okay, my first major surgery when I was 2 years old. My first surgery. Up above here, I have a scar. I had my first of many surgeries. Been born without my right pectoral muscle, small shoulder, withered arm. And there was some, the movement of my arm was restricted. There was some tissue in here that had to be cut out. So they hooked me up and did that. I was born right-handed, but I do everything left-handed, except for light things. Like I shoot a basketball right-handed. I throw a ball right-handed. Darts, things like that. But bowling, I'm left-handed. Yeah, anything heavy. And I was quite an athlete. If I had two good arms, I'd have probably been on scholarship. I was already offered a partial scholarship at a small school for track, even with this bad arm. But I just didn't have the fast start. You got to have two strong arms just pushing out in front of you. But I was some kind of quick and fast. So, we moved back to Houston, to a place called West University, a suburb. And this little story, I don't even like telling it, but God tells me I have to. And he had something to do with it, but I'm not going to go into that part of it. So anyway, I had decided when I was in 2nd grade, I was tired of school, didn't want to go anymore. I don't exactly know why, I just know I said, that's it, and I'm not going. Dad can't get me up and finish school, I said, I'm not going. And it was on. He was going to get me there. It took him about an hour to get me to the car. Fighting and screaming and running around, hiding, getting under the you name it, I was doing it. And anyway, he finally gets me to the school, but it's too tight. He wasn't even going to try to get me out of the car by himself. So he get out, and he goes and gets the principal. And my dad's about 6'2", but he's real slim. And but he comes out with his principal. He's taller than he is, and he's a hefty guy. He's burly. Anyway, so they come and they said, get out of the car. I said, I'm not getting out of the car. I'd already locked the doors. Only the two front doors were locked, and it was those locks that you pull up and push down. And so my dad used the key, and he popped that lock up, and I slammed it back down. Said, I'm not going to school, I told you. He jumps the key, they start throwing the keys at one another over the roof. The principal was trying the same thing, and I'm slamming his door, I'm leaping across the car. Man, I don't know how long I went, but they finally, in 5 minutes maybe, seemed like an eternity. I was terrorized, this way I looked at it. Anyway, the principal got it open. And I saw that door open, and I got back on the far other side of it, by the steering wheel with my back against the back door. And I curled up like a ball. Had my knees on my chest. And he reached in to get me, and I unleashed on him, kicking him in the face with everything I had. He broke his glasses, and his orbital bone got shattered. So, That wasn't my first principal either. There's another one. So, but anyway, so they carried me in, and it was very embarrassing, just crying. But again, funny thing, nobody, because I stayed with this same group for 9 years, going through Western University and the junior high there that you go to. Nobody ever said anything to me about it. And I knew some of those kids that were in that class. My camera only goes for half an hour. I can see on the screen that I had point towards me that when it runs out, I have to turn it off and turn it back on. But anyway, that ended my fight with my first principal. Now here it is right here. I had me put these together. In the 10th grade, the principal of the school told me to cut my hair. You know, I had long, blonde, wavy hair, well past my shoulder. Again, this is, I graduated high school in '76, and this is in junior high, so it's in the early '70s, but it felt like the '60s still. And I kept in a ponytail. It was neat. It was a school-wide policy. I think I was one of the last people to cut his hair. I was hiding all the time. I was always on the alert for the teachers that would send me in. But I went and got it cut. I told the barber right at my collar. Sat there in the city, cut it right at my collar as I was instructed to do. And then I was commanded to return to the principal's office. And so I presented myself to him. I sat down in the chair in his office, and he gets up, walks behind me, and grabbed me by my hair, back of my head, and jerked my head back fast. And said, "It's still over your collar." Now, I don't know if I did a backflip out of that thing. I can't really recall. But what I do recall is it took 3 people to get me off of him. And I was permanently expelled from school. Which ended up me leaving home. It wasn't a runaway. I'm just out of here. I'm tired of everything and everybody. I ain't going to school ever again. Hate school always there. That was me. Yeah, they had to pull me off of him. I was saying to a friend of mine, he said, "You know, my brother went to that school. He has some stories about that guy." So it wasn't me. It was him. Second major surgery came when I was 12 years old to try and repair my right knee and just below it. I was running full speed in a field. High grass and weeds with a family dog. And God says he had something to do with what the dog did. For no apparent reason, just suddenly he was running at my side. And he just bolted, he just stopped going straight to the heart of the left and went right between the legs. I go sailing in the air, and I came down on my knee. Except my right knee came down on a broken Coke bottle, Coca-Cola. And they used some thick glass back then. It was split nose down, way down. It was all broken up, but it was the bottom all jagged at my knee. Just, you know, they said it went to the other side of your knee. They said, "You got that whole field in your knee." But when I got to the hospital, I sat there for a long time. The first officer came in and just told my mom, "Right from me." You know, I'm in the room, you know. He said, I can't repair it. It's not repairable. We want to take it off. You can't use it." And I already knew that, because when, as I started screaming and yelling for my dad, he finally came back. This field was behind our house. It was a chain link fence, and in the field. And you know, my dad finally heard me. He got over. He saw the blood, and so all of a sudden he scared to death. I'm going into shock, and he got me to put my arm around his neck, and he said, "Can you walk on it?" And I tried, and it just collapsed. It was useless. It was awful. And then I had to climb over that fence. And my mom was going crazy and screaming and crying. And he had to go take care of her. I'm sitting in his bathroom, my leg all opened up, and I'm just getting sicker and sicker, nauseated, scared. I was a cripple. And but anyway, they get me down to the hospital. And just, like I said, first I was really just like, I don't know what to do. And just right then, and God said he knew he was going to be there. This doctor walks by, and my mom recognized me. And she goes, Dr. Kane. And she runs out the door. Well, this is Dr. Kane. Her nanny that I mentioned earlier, in her old age, very old, maybe in her 90s, I don't know, late 80s, but living with her sister, broke her hip. And this doctor repaired it. This is a long time ago, people. Repaired it, and she actually walked again with a walker. I remember. But that's who this doctor was. And she said, my son, they're going to take his leg out. You've got to come look at it. And this Dr. King actually became the medical doctor for the Houston Oilers. He repaired many in me before and after me. I guess that's what he specialized in. But he was at the hospital just to do rounds. He wasn't dressed for surgery or anything. But he came in that room, and I mean, he was livid when he looked at my knee and knew how I'd been there for like 5 hours at this time. And he just started barking orders about getting me put for surgery, and he takes off to go get put. And they literally ran me down to surgery in Montgomery. I mean, they were trying. And this kind of fear they put in everybody. Anyway, I was in the hospital for weeks, and I woke up with my leg. I was glad of that. They had a cast in my hip to my ankle. And he told me, when I finally was being released, he said, if you put any weight on that leg, you'll never walk again. So, I can't remember, 6 weeks, I don't know how long it was that I had that cast on. It wasn't my first cast, it wasn't my last. Well, maybe it was my first. Maybe it wasn't my last. That's another story. We're not getting very far. There's 6 chapters, I'm barely getting to the first one. But what I'll do is I'll just do 6, just like I did with Isaiah 53. I did 6 or 7 videos, 7 I thought, but then I joined them all together and put it as one video, the definitive commentary of Isaiah 53, which comes straight from God, by the way. I mean, you can contest what I'm saying all you want, but it makes perfect sense. For the first time, Isaiah 53 is explained. And how I've come to the smartest religious view in the world who can see that, and what the wounding and the punishment, everything's about, and how it's really, in some ways, a snare for the Gentiles for the day of the Lord. Because he knows he can take me and just decimate any argument they want to put forth. You know, in particular, I'm blemished. I'm the Antichrist. In that I am exact opposite of Jesus Christ. Okay, he's so smart, he was keeping synagogue at 12. Supposedly he was a perfect, beautiful man. I'm just figured. Now, I'm not bad looking, but I'm not, I'm not Brad Pitt or anything. Anyway, it's sinner, I wasn't a visual sinner. I was a good person, I was good to other people, I was very compassionate. I said there was already a lot of humble in me. I didn't laud myself and the things I could do over others. Like being the fastest guy top 5 at school and the fastest in the neighborhood, I didn't brag on myself. But as he took me back through my life and informed me when things were sin, it just seems like I touched on all of it. And if murder in your heart is actually committing that sin, as the Christians say, I don't really go with that, but there's really not much I've missed. So I'm a sinner. Jesus can say, well, I'm a sinner too, I'm lying. All you got to do is read the scripture in the gospel, you see why I'm lying. That's easy, and I came from the banished line. I thought I was the man of Isaiah 53. I thought I was going to be exposed to death, but given long life. He's what he would tell you if he was here. He said, but you know what happened? They crucified me. And on the cross, I realized I'm not that man. This is an exposure to death. This was like a sure thing. Father, 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 why have you forsaken me? That's Jesus Christ saying, I'm not the man of Isaiah 53, and I just figured it out. That's what that is. Has God done? You sure you didn't have that written? Why on earth would they write that down? They forget about it. Maybe they were just thinking me. But that's what it's about, Christians. All they got their way. They can explain that being counted a sinner means he got crucified with the sinner beside him being crucified on each side, left and right. So there's three of them, so he's counted a sinner. Okay. You know, it's supposed to be the scripture. Don't be able to find a person to do. You might tell Judaism the same thing. You know, this is to find somebody. It's not the people of Israel. They're all kinds of people. Now, we're looking for a guy so God can have a Moses. Why? We have a new covenant. Why? It's the day of the Lord. Why? Jeremiah says so. That's why. It's so easy. The lamb blooms again. Okay, and he's coming to covenant relationship with the temple. So the lamb blooms again at a time when there's no temple. Jerusalem's going to be rebuilt. It's a metropolitan today. This is no Jerusalem of antiquity. The old city might be too big. And I'll make a new covenant with you. I won't forgive all your sins and remember them no more. That will cause Torah to be written on your heart. It's a metaphor. When did he do this before? Oh, that's right. Assyrian Babylon exiles. Isaiah was right before. God said, I forgive your sins, remember them no more. They became a holy city. What did they do? They built the second temple. What are we missing? The third temple. This is so easy. So it is the day of the Lord. There's any question of that. I'm just telling you it started with the Russians. Little risky. And he's bringing the covenant, but he's got to have a Moses. He's sent a prophet like Moses. So he's saying it's Joshua. No, it's not. I'm leaving today, the day of the Lord. And guess what? He gives us a description of him. He knows this was a time of secularism, reliance on science and medicine and doctors. And you got so many more people who the only book out there is not the Hebrew Bible. There's a lot more books in it. You know, there's all kinds of distractions, television, cell phones, computers. You know, back then, you know, you just sat around and said, what do you think that's there? I don't know. We can send some rain. You know, it's just, because it was easier to get them back then. But here it is. It's here. And God said, you see why I put Shunner and Despise in there? Because for a while I said, God, you know, this is before we really got the books done and everything. I said, I'm just sitting in a room. I can't really tell anybody Shunner and Despise in that. Counting me plagued, afflicted, by God and everything else. He said, well, how you feel now? That we've been putting all this on the internet, guys, that just Shunner and Despise. Yeah. I can say, they know. There's no question this ain't gotten back to those three. I say, you keep attacking them like this, and I'll be certainly sure, just in case I'm wrong. But, because he won't actually tell me, he won't tell me anything, this is a rule of thumb, he won't tell me anything that I cannot find out or become knowledgeable on or informed on of my own. Which means about nothing, because we're in a room all the time. The adjunct of the Holy of Holies is what I call it. I live in the Holy. I'm like the priest who can go, the only person who could go into the Holy of Holies was the high priest. And that's what I'm like. As a matter of fact, God had me write down, just as he had David write down, there's Psalm 151, where God said, it's on a video, where God is speaking. Where the Lord came to me and God said, quote, and within that, he says that he declared me. We actually used the song where he declares it for David. He declared me an eternal priest in the order of Melchizedek and King David. and a rightful king, small k, and a rightful king. And he also declared, I'm the righteous servant. I mean, that's God talking. I mean, he's using it when he dictated to me. It wasn't, to be written in my personality. That's him. That's him doing a new song. So, because he does that. Even in the writings, the person doing the writing, whatever prophet it was, or Moses, or David, if he wrote Samuel 2 and Kings 1 until he died. As I said, God says, look, just assume the central character is the one I had right. Because their lives changed when I come to them. Just like mine changed. This is not anything I could have ever conceived or even bothered thinking of. I had never read the Bible my whole life. If he hadn't told me, we're going to the bookstore and get you a Tanakh. That was 13 years ago. And my answer was, what's a Tanakh? I didn't know anything. And look at all this knowledge. But this is it. This is the only power he's going to use in creation. He's not going to perform miracles. He's not going to have me performing miracles. And he's not. He said, the only power I'm going to use is on you. What I can get you to do. He said, I can take a Gentile Texan and take him to Israel and get my temple built. Okay. He said, because that's what you say to God all the time. Okay. And one night, I hadn't even read Isaiah 53. He didn't come to me and just say, offer yourself a guilt. I crushed you with cancer. It was me that did. That's not, I wouldn't have known what he was talking about. We finally get to Isaiah a couple of years later. He said, keep reading Isaiah 53. Is that okay? And so I read it. I said, okay, finish it. He said, who do you think that is? I said, I have no idea. I said, barely read it. I didn't know what it was saying. I said, I think these two verses ought to be up here. I said, you sure nobody mess with this thing? He said, nobody mess with it. He said, just get out of that Isaiah right. He said, that's you. I said, oh, okay. I couldn't have good luck convincing anybody. I can't even tell what he's saying. He said, before we get done, and he's right. I've been over that thing so many times. From my original version of Isaiah 53 that he dictated, or told me how to put together, but every sentence, every word is, we changed it up and added things. I've learned things. Like I didn't know about the chest of devotion. I didn't know why the angel was leaving early in Malachi 3, but I do now. And all that would cause an amendment to my midrash in Isaiah 53. And, the book has me, these are all on videotapes now, me and Rashi. Rashi, the first one to come up with this is Israel. And, I look at his answers and I just shake my head sometimes. You should see his answer in Malachi 3 to the angel of the covenant that you desire. There's only a covenant of friendship and a covenant of Jeremiah. And this is his answer. It's midrash, so he just takes a section of the angel is on the way. And it just says the angel of the covenant. And his commentary is the angel that avenges the revenge of the covenant. I said, what does that mean? What are you talking about? And I said, God's being funny. He said, I don't know. I said, you do know. I said, well, I'm not telling you. So, God likes to feel as though he's laughing. He doesn't actually laugh. He sends me a perception every day. Or he uses me to laugh. I've mentioned that in a video. Because he can't. He controls my words. I learned that in walking with him. Just one day, I'm talking out loud as we go. I'm discussing man and divine beings as though I had a sermon I was giving or a speech to somebody or a seminar. And I'm rolling, and I can tell he is really making this thing rock. He's taking it from here to here to here. And we're going. And I'm going. And all of a sudden, I use a word or a couple words that I simply don't use. And they're not what my mind was even thinking of. They just came out. And I just stopped. I said, did you do that? I didn't even say, hey, did you just make me say these things? Because I know he knew. I said, did you do that? He said, I did. He was always in did it. I did. I said, okay. Anyway, that's where it all started. Now I know. Okay, guess who that is? That's the Holy Spirit. Using me. He doesn't sound like that. But he'll use words like that. So he's getting bored. They like to cut. Let me just say this part guys you don't know, it's not all the time. It's sometimes we do tend to get kind of silly in here. But, they do things after a while. I'm like, I feel like a kindergarten teacher, and I got two of those kids that you just shake your head at. You say, this is a handful. These two, nothing but trouble. Always throwing around, looking for a laugh. And the Spirit's always working in heaven. There's God's laugh, as it were. Again, he doesn't actually laugh. It's a perception that's his emotion. If God has any emotions left, because worrying about other people's pain is not one of them. He made that clear to me. I don't care about your pain. And just saying it makes you mad. He says, he'll draw in. And he'll do so many times over and over. He says, this is easy because now it irritates the fire out of it. He just started. I said, how do y'all keep doing this? And one day I told him, I said, I got it. Which means it actually came from them. I got it. You never grew up. You never got sent to your room. You never had to climb that mountain to achieve something. Put yourself out there. Nobody's ever hoped you. He said, I said, that's what it is. You never grew up. That's what it is. Yeah, I'm dealing with the child guy. That's what I'm dealing with. Helping argument. And then he came down as mean, very serious mature guy. And I didn't bring that argument up anymore. But that's how it gets to me sometimes. It's an incredible life. For me, I'm not going to get to him. I get to him at the end. I'm getting close to when I got shot. I thought that was a new chapter. I was not. Well, I'm going to pick, this is getting long. Anything over half an hour, we try to stop. My Isaiah 53, 5 hours. But, I watch it all at one time, of course. He doesn't hardly let me watch it. Yeah, I don't even watch them before they get posted. He said, no, you watch it later. Because it comes on the TV that he got me. And I didn't know at the time it was going to be, that he was serious about doing videos. And I certainly didn't know about making it a backdrop. And he decides everything. He tells me when to eat, when to get up. I don't sleep probably at all, 2 or 3 hours a night, and sometimes less, and take a half hour nap sometimes. But I found out I feel fresh. I don't need that much sleep. He said, you're not really doing anything. Why do you need a lot of sleep? And see, that used to make me mad. Now I just laugh at it. Thank you very much for listening. I'll pick this back up on another video, and eventually I'll put these first 6 chapters, just like I did Isaiah 53, because it's a book that he dictated to me. I can't get it published. I'm going to put it on YouTube. That's why I'm reading it. And as I said, if you don't want to listen to it, don't listen to it. But the information that's in these books and in those videos is, that's not proof. And quite frankly, God said, if that's not enough for them, well, that's just too bad. Utter destruction is what they end up getting. They better learn how to listen to proper. See, it's no different than the people back then. They'll say, well, why didn't they listen to Isaiah? Well, why didn't they listen to Ezekiel? Why didn't they? They laughed at Ezekiel. That's what Rashi said in his commentary. I didn't know it was laughing at him, but just ignored him. Everybody thinks they know it. But in any event, I do know there's one chapter we haven't put in there, and that is recognizing the prophet in time. It says Moses vouched for Joshua, so he didn't have to be tested. And the problem with all that is, and I think why about hadn't had to put it on video, is that they're looking for a seer, somebody who can see the future. You see, that's antiquity. I mean, that's not what you're looking for today. This wasn't a seer. And none of the prophets were seers. They just wrote down what God told them to write down. God's the prophet. He's the one making prophecy. And what he does, he doesn't actually just see the future. He walks it through. He says, okay, right here is when they're going to send up the satellite. This is where humanity will be at that time. He can walk it through in his mind. As I mentioned, his eyes, he doesn't have them. It's just his absolute knowledge of all things. He can form a picture of this room. Me, it's in here. He knows every atom of my body. And it's like he does a vision for himself, a visualization. That's what I call when they put pictures in my mind. He says, and he puts it into the spirit's mind. And they're both within me. You know, the big cloud that just came down. If you're sitting in a room with me, it envelops you. But it engulfs me, it goes through me. My little spirit cloud becomes part of the big cloud. That's why God is in his spirit. Here's the elements of spirit, here's the elements of God's presence, his mind. Two clouds, they just come together, they can be together. Okay, God's still one. He created the other cloud. And then in this room, filled with them, my little spirit is like a little cloud that just came in and part of it. That's who I am. That's a man of divine being. Okay? No, it's like nobody's really expecting it. Well, maybe it's because you didn't know these things. And now they want, I get to see them shunned. Shun means I'm not looking at that. It sounds like a coup. We by faith, by the fundamental principles of plan baptism, the talent, from his diagnosis of the talent. Once you do your own, once you throw the talent out and learn some new stuff, once you get out of antiquity, every religion has an end times like that. Every religion ends up with utopia for its people. Everybody. Well, don't be like everybody. You're the Jews. Go ahead, let's get practical. Let's have God in our midst again, in a man like he was in Moses. Let's point at him and tell the Christians that is the man of Isaiah 53. Here's what it's about. God said he's coming back. He told us, we're not waiting on him like you. He said when he was coming back, he false prophesied 5 times. He ain't coming back. He wasn't who he thought he was. He told us on the cross. I'm not the man of Isaiah 53. He tells us. What else was he doing? Well, what did you say? I'm about to die. What do you think he's talking about? What do you think he's thinking about? You're not supposed to die. He thinks he's the man of Isaiah 53. So do they. Which is mind-boggling because I'm the man. And there's nothing about me that says Jesus Christ. Nothing. You see hear me cuss God. I cussed him trying to die. I've begged for death 1,000 times. He said, it's not been 1,000 times. I said, it's been hundreds. He said, well, that's true. You have cursed me more than any man in the history of mankind. And he said, and you did it face to face. And I said, you shouldn't make me so mad. He laughed, y'all. He laughed. When I'm cussing him, he did make so mad. And oh, you're kidding. That's the way. He gave me his perspective. This is how he did it. He's a kid. Imagine you created ants. And ants are living beings. In other words, they can think and they have emotion. Okay, you get a great big ant farm over here in the room. Okay, you decide you're going to get one ant to get all the other ants to do stuff. But you got to get him ready. And you get him ready the way I'm getting you ready. Now, he's mad, right? I think yes. Yes. Now, magic. I'm always laying in the bed. I got a big table. I got a microwave on. I put my computer on. I got a big fan I like to have on. And he said, look over that table. Now imagine that ant got loose. And he is pulled up. And he is standing on the corner of that table. And he is giving you the what for in ant language. I mean, he's going. And he turned around and shaking his butt at you. And he's cussing. And all this. And all you got to do is go bump. And he's gone. That's the best funny way. And it is. And that's how you know, that's what it does to him with me. You know, the spirit wild me up. I call him the troublemaker. Troubler. He's so funny. But God's so humorous. There's a difference in their humor. Okay, now I'm told that does wrap it up. I'm going to pick up a gunshot. I guess he was fortunate accident to my knee. You know, they ended up opening me up in between my breast and my pelvic bone, and now it's been 3 times. and eventually, the lung cancer and colon cancer and skin cancer. But the lung cancer is when they told you should have died from colon cancer. He said, but this is it. We can't treat that. It's too advanced. You're gone. And prepared to die. That was 20 years ago when the planes hit New York. It was the planes hitting New York that got me up off the ground one last time to see one more doctor. The life of God's righteous servant of Isaiah 53, chapter 3, gunshot. Shortly after I recovered from my knee injury, I moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was not happy about it at all. It turned out to be a lot of fun. I made some great friends to celebrate my 13th birthday. My only injury in Florida was having my front teeth shattered and knocked out, requiring caps, which is more of an ordeal than I would have imagined. We returned to West University in Houston after 2 years. My mom was not doing well at all, and it was getting close to her second suicide attempt. I was back with my old friends and did not have much supervision from home, and I failed ninth grade. I made my own decisions, and I rarely listened to others. And after being set back a year at junior high school, I made a few new friends, which led to my next serious injury. My best friend was a Spanish Italian whose father was from Sicily. And he kept a machine gun and a violin case in his office at the restaurant he owned, where his son and I were waiters. It was called the Godfather. My son was the best pool player I've ever known to play with, an absolute natural. I will call him Antonio, but that's not his real name. Antonio's girlfriend was a Jewish girl. I will call her Rebecca, but that is not her real name. Antonio was a Catholic Christian. Rebecca did not practice Judaism, and Antonio did not go to church. I was a confirmed atheist, and we never talked about God or Jesus. Rebecca's father had foreclosed on a ranch about 8 hours from Houston outside of LaGrange, Texas, Fayette County. LaGrange was famous for the Chicken Ranch, which was an illegal brothel that operated from 1905 until 1973. The business served as the basis for the 1973 ZZ Top song, LaGrange, and the Broadway musical, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, as well as its 1982 film adaptation. T.J. Florney was known as the meanest sheriff in Texas. In the coming weeks, I would be interrogated by him outside of Shock Room 3 at Benchild Hospital in Houston. This is an excerpt about him from an internet article. It was the most one-sided Texas battle since the Alamo, as 100 citizens watched disbelievingly in the dusty little town of LaGrange, their beefy sheriff, T.J. Florney, reached into a black 1975 Continental Mark IV and began to shake by his $300 suit Marvin Zimmer, the star consumer crusader of Houston, Texas. That's from People, June 17. Next, the sheriff tore off Zimmer's blue-white toupee, waved it in the air, and then finally ground the rug under his cowboy boots. Behind Florney's fury was the fact that on Zimmer's last assignment in LaGrange 18 months before, he had filmed an expose, which resulted in the closing of a critical part of the local economy, the Chicken Ranch, a legendary body house. Antonio, Rebecca, and I first went up to the ranch in the summer of 1975. It was a small ranch house and small lakes with horses roaming around loosened pastures. We decided it'd be fun to try and catch one of those horses and go riding. The next time I went to the ranch house was in Rebecca's father's Mercedes-Benz. Two-door convertible Mercedes-Benz. I sat on the hood of that Benz with a lariat while she tore through fields trying to run down a horse for me to rope. The horses could turn too fast, and we never got close enough for me to rope one. What we could and did do on the next trip was bring guns. A 30-30 rifle, shotgun, and two 22 caliber pistols with holsters. As a backdrop, Antonio and Rebecca had broken up as boyfriend and girlfriend, and her attention had turned to me. I did not believe that caused any friction between Antonio and me, but it should have. It did not seem to be a source of animosity of Antonio towards me in any event. On October 5, 1975, we were all back at the ranch having a great time. Tony and I were shooting at cans with our pistols and practicing a quick draw from the holsters. We were standing shoulder to shoulder, about 3 feet apart, and he was a little forward of me. Rebecca came up behind us, between us, and said she wanted to shoot. Antonio passed his gun to her, and it fired when it was going by me. The bullet went on a straight line through my bladder, intestines, and colon from the front right and lodged in the back of my left buttock in my backside. I could see the trajectory in my mind. I fell to the ground, and Antonio fell on top of me, rolling me over and over. I think he was looking for an exit of the bullet. I told him to get me to a car and get to a hospital. Felt like Babe Ruth had swung a bat up between my legs. I never once thought of God. On a big ranch, there are several gates for different sections of land and different purposes, usually with chains and a lock. When we got to the first one, I told Antonio, fly through it. I told him to ram it. I knew I was dying, and all I could think of was, you have got to hurry. I didn't panic, but I had never been so afraid and had never felt fear like that again to this day. Sometimes I think I have forgiven Antonio for accidentally shooting me, but I had not and cannot forgive him for stopping at those gates. I'm still mad about it. I was seriously angry at him. We got to the LaGrange Hospital before noon on a Sunday. They had to call the doctor to come in. I asked the nurse for something for pain, and she told me my vital signs were too low. That if she gave me a shot of morphine, I'd drop dead right there. It would kill me. No pain medication. The doctor came and looked at me and said there was nothing they could do there. He told me they were getting an ambulance to take me to Houston, Top Hospital, where they operated on gunshot victims all weekend long and do to this day. It's a trauma hospital. Many young doctors from Baylor University, all around the state. It's a high desirable place to be because you're cutting all. If you want to be a surgeon, you're cutting all day long. I knew one thing with a certainty. I could not pass out or fall asleep. If I did, I would not come back. In an ambulance, I talked to two fellows that were tending to me, as much as anything to stay awake. I asked them such things as what it was like to be married, graduate high school, have a career job, but my mind repeated over and over, you have got to hurry. We arrived at dusk. This happened before noon when I got shot, so now it's getting dark. When the ambulance opened, my brother jumped in to help. My mom was standing by the entrance to the shock rooms in her fur coat. She later told me that since Top was a public hospital, it might help if they thought we had money. I didn't see my dad, but my sister told me later, the whole way to the hospital, all he could say was, to God, please don't take my boy from me. I stayed awake for some 6 to 8 hours in awful pain. They took me to shop room 3. It was filled with people giving orders and very loud. On the table, the nurse told me she had to put her finger in my bottom, which embarrassed me. And I raised up like a sit-up and saw nothing but blood rushing from my bottom onto the table. You have to hurry is all I could say. They finished prepping me for surgery and rolled me to a hall in a line of others awaiting surgery. And someone was saying my name, and I opened in to see T.J. Forney, Sheriff of LaGrange. He wanted to know if I'd been shot intentionally, what we were doing at that ranch, did we have permission to be there, and et cetera, et cetera. I told him I thought it was an accident, and to leave me alone. I never saw him again. I didn't have to wait long. The orderlies bypassed everyone in front of me and took me to surgery. I awoke in a large room with about 10 beds on my side of the room and 10 beds on the other, with other patients, and I could hear moaning and crying here and there. It took a few moments to remember what had happened and why I was in there. I fell back asleep, and when I awoke, my dad was telling me he would have me out of there into a private hospital as soon as possible. It was the next day when they transferred me to the Methodist Hospital in the medical center, where they had operated on my knee, and I had spent weeks there. I had a hose with a bag coming from my bladder and a colostomy, an opening called the stoma, which is your intestine on the outside of your abdomen, with a bag over it for going to the bathroom. I was out of danger from dying, but still very weak, and I needed to gain some weight. The track team was already getting together, running distance and cross-country workouts provided by the coach, preparing for track meets in the following school semester. I lived about a half mile from the high school. The day I got home, I walked to look at the track. It did not seem possible I could get back in shape. I was afraid to cross the roads to the school. I could not even trot to get out of the way if a car came my way. My insides felt like jelly, and I had been warned that too much physical exertion in the first 10 days could cause a stomal hernia, and my intestines to start extending from my body. I was homeschooled for the rest of the semester by a private volunteer tutor, and passed classes I probably would have failed. The beauty of that gunshot was that it changed me. I was never going to graduate high school, having failed so many classes. So I set up night school classes for the next and my last semester of high school. I was 18, soon to be 19, and a senior. Chapter 4, College and Law School. Before the summer of 1975, one of my best friends in the track team, who threw the discus and shot put in field events and was a senior, told me he wanted to do something big the coming summer before starting college at Louisiana State University, LSU. I was only a junior and I had no plans for the summer. He mentioned this to me, and I began thinking about how long it had been since I had been to Colorado. My father, who had really good years and many so-so years, depending on how the oil and gas industry was doing. And when I was in junior high school, he had sold some prospects, had completed a few wells, and had purchased a condominium in Pagosa Springs near Durango, Colorado. My friend's name was Keith Miller, and I called him Miller. He had given me the name of Say Babe. At one of our night track meets, I was running the 330-yard low hurdles, and the last turn was behind bleachers where the officials lost sight of us for a few moments. A runner 2 miles left veered out of his lane into mine and took my hurdle, and I had to slow down and go around it, yelling, "Hey man, that's my hurdle." I wasn't happy. I do not remember how Miller knew what I had yelled, but he was probably on the football field inside the track, working on shot putting discus, watching me run and hurting me. I did not really know him very well at this time, other than he was a popular senior who knew everyone, and in stark contrast to me. On the following Monday, I was walking down the halls between classes, and coming in the other direction was Miller, though I did not see him. Then as he was passing me, in a loud voice, loud enough for everyone in the entire hall to hear, I hear, "Say, babe, that's not her." Hence, say, babe. That began a really good and fun friendship, and I got to know the class I should have been in if I had not failed ninth grade. And because I was Miller's friend, I was immediately accepted by anyone he introduced me to. I found out about 40 years later on Facebook. I looked him up and we friended that he's Jewish, and particularly because of his brother. He's got an older brother, and they look just alike. They live up in Oregon. But I did not know that. It's not something we ever talked about. Just didn't think about it. I'm sure he wasn't observant at the time. I told Miller about my dad's condo and suggested we plan a trip up there to backpack in the Womanichi wilderness of the San Juan National Forest. I had hiked there while in junior high school with a friend and his little brother. I had a driver's license in my second year in the ninth grade. The prominent 13,000-foot peak is 10.7 miles from the town of Silverton, which began as a silver mining camp in 1873, and that is where I plan to take Nick. So Miller and I take off. We use his car. As I said, he was getting ready to graduate, and his dad bought him a Toyota. Can't remember the name of it. My dad's condo. It's about 60 miles from Durango, where a train depot is located that runs a train through the Womanichi Wilderness to Silverton. The train is an authentic, narrow gauge, steam powered, coal fired, scenic railroad train ranked one of the top 10 scenic railroads in the world. It's something else. It stops twice in the same places to let off and pick up hikers and backpackers in the Animas Canyon of the Womanichi. At top speed of 18 miles per hour, it takes the train 3.5 hours to travel the 45 miles from Durango to Silverton. Oh, here it is. Miller had a new Toyota Celica. And after a day and late into the night, we made to Pagosa, slept, and we're at the train station before the first departure the next day. I don't know what the problem was, but the train was not going to run that day. So we couldn't get to where I wanted to take it. It's just too far. We decided to get a hotel in Durango and just head down the train tracks into the wilderness and explore an area I had never seen in with the maps. We got lost. And at one point we decided, let's just put these backpacks down and you go that way and I'll go this way. Well, we did that. We went back up and then we couldn't find a backpack. And we did finally find them. We slept that night, and we had a big black bear episode because we had left some food out on the ground, which we shouldn't have done. And but anyway, we ended up making it back, and we had one of the best party nights I've ever had in my life. We hit the main street in Durango, which is a tourist hotspot, and we hit every single bar. You could drink at 18 back then. It wasn't 21 as it is today. And we did. We made sure it was like a go. Okay, so every one of them had at least one drink: shot of whiskey, Boilermaker, beer, whatever. I can't really recall other than I knew I had been drinking the night before when I woke up. But we did. We hit both sides of the street. I don't know how long it took us and how many drinks we had, but we just had a lot of fun. Okay, I'll be coming to chapter, well, I guess it's 4. I don't know. I thought I was coming up to the cancer story, but this is different. This is getting into alterations while it's school. So anyway, I was shot on October 5, 1975, and by early December, so it was October 5, and then in early December, I had surgery again to put my intestines back together, which was, you know, it was dicey. You know, they kept telling me, we don't know if we can re-attack. You know, there's people like Bob Hope lived his whole life with one of these stonal deals. And it's just a horrible thing. It was successful. They put it back together, and they removed my bladder tube. The girl next door, who I had never talked to other than to say hey or hello, and who also went to high school with me, had been coming over daily, and she agreed to be my girlfriend when I asked her a few months later. I did my night school and graduated last in my class, or close to it, of over 400 people. In late December, I began running with the track team. Now, I had surgery early December. I already got out there with them, which was difficult. Pulling 2 tires on the cinder track, you know, the rope, 2 tires, and you put a harness around your waist. I had to put mine high up on my shoulder. On the cinder track for a lap and a half, 660 yards for 2-minute intervals, 6 times was the toughest. My speed and quickness was still there, but distance running and my endurance, it took quite a while to come back. In early February, just about 3 months after being shot, I won my first 120-yard high hurdles race at a track meet that was fast enough to qualify at the upcoming district track meet for the regional track meet. Winning at the regionals would place me in the state track meet. I was fast, but my disfigured right arm really held me back. Then my heart was broken, and I cried for the first time since I was a child, best I could remember. My coach, who really liked me, he understood the effort I had put in to get back in shape. Called me to his office when I knew something was wrong. He told me I could no longer be on the track team. I had too many semesters of school to be eligible according to the eligibility rules. It was because I had failed ninth grade. And of course, I had no one to blame but myself. Skipping school all the time, just not trying, or caring about learning was why I failed. I was not lacking in intelligence and common sense as many people thought of me. I could and often did read a complete science fiction paperback book during the school day. One day, I get them from my brother. I just sat in the back of each class and read my book, and the teachers always left me alone. I also was suspended from school a couple of times for fighting. The first fight was in the gym in the bleachers, with the principal on the floor telling us the do's and don'ts for the second semester of the 10th grade. This is 2 years before I was shot. I found out he already knew me by name, and I had never talked to him. The second fight was with the same guy, but this time we took it across the street from the school. He had about 10 of his friends, and I, being pretty much a loner, I had none. They were African American, bused into school from neighborhoods far away. And I just didn't understand them, or know why they even talked to me with words I did not get, like word, or say, man, can I hold a dollar? That is what started the fight in the bleachers. I hear from behind me and one stood to my left saying, "Man, can I hold the quarter?" I turned around and just looked at it. And I said, I did not have a quarter. Over with the principal, I undid my ponytail. My student's sitting right behind me, and I'm well aware of that. And I brushed my long blonde hair and then reached into my pocket for some chapstick for my lips. And I pulled my hand out with the chapstick. Turned out I did have a quarter. And from behind me, I hear saying, "Man, you said you don't have no quarter." To which I replied, turning around, "I don't have a quarter for you." The next part's kind of hazy. But I do know I grabbed him by the front of his shirt and threw him down the bleachers onto the students sitting below me. That is when the principal yelled my name and told me to go to his office. The next day, the guy and his friends were waiting on me when I got to school, and we fought across the street. The principal told me not to get into any more fights, and this is the fight I got suspended for. I remember being in, after my suspension, being in the men's room smoking a cigarette in a stall, and a group of African Americans came in, and they were talking about the fight. What I remember was hearing, "That white boy went Muhammad Ali on him." My favorite fighter. I even saw the Ali Foreman fight in Kinshasa there, live in Amsterdam in 1974. And some of my best friends in high school were African Americans, mostly on the track team where we could get to know one another. I still had run-ins with the general population of the African Americans, who everyone just called blacks back then. I never used the N-word and thought they would help themselves a lot if they stopped using it. Mostly I think they were angry at being bused in from neighborhoods far away. In fairness to them, white kids did not seem to like me much either. I looked young even for my young age, and with my long hair, about 6 to 8 inches past my collar, I looked kind of girlish, and many people said that to me. One day a friend of mine told me what it was to him. You never smile and seem to be very angry, like if someone looks at you crossways, you're going to come answer them, daring them to say something, like you want to fight. My next suspension for fighting began in middle shop, and it was all my fault. There's not a big deal to that. The last fight I was ever in came right before I was gunshot at the ranch. The accident really changed me and the way I looked at life. I never got in another fight after I got shot. It took some of the fire out of me. My longtime friend from junior high school and I were at Memorial Park at night and walked down a train track that ran through the woods, away from the streets and recreation areas. We went to the center of a long railroad trestle bridge that ran over a bayou to wait for a train to round the corner from either direction on a single track. When a train would round the corner, we had to run and jump off the trestle after clearing the bayou. We were drinking beer. As we were sitting, we started talking about the price of gas at 44 cents a gallon in 1975. Anyway, the trains weren't running. We got up to leave, and as we're walking down the steps, she said something about my father and about how to find oil and gas. And I turned around and just hit him with everything I had, with my right arm. And I realized what a stupid thing to do. I called him the Big Sweet. He's Norwegian. His hair was white and long and longer than mine. His hand was the size. And I had nowhere to run. That was the really dumb part about it. I mean, I couldn't move. I couldn't use my quickness. I couldn't box as I had with the fellow across the street. And he just took one of these things. He's very athletic. The coaches all wanted him on the high school team, but he didn't want to, football team. And but anyway, he hit me just one time. That was the whole fight. And it was just 2 hits. My measly hit with my right arm. I let it fast, I hit him when I wanted to hit him. Well, I say that. I didn't even think about it. But he just about knocked me senseless. I mean, I saw red. And so anyway, that was it for our friendship. We just, although after I got shot, he and I got back together a little bit, but by that time I had met Denise next door, and I wasn't going to be going out drinking beer at the special anymore. I was going to get serious, and that's when I set up my night classes and everything. Her big sleeve. After the gunshot, I stopped seeing old friends, including Antonio and the Big Three, and spent all my time with Denise from next door. I never wanted to be someone who succeeded in life. My dad always told me when he was angry with me that with my smart mouth, I was never going to be anything but a ditch digger or a lawyer. While he said lawyer in a derogatory way, he got me to thinking I'd like to be a trial lawyer. I had to get into college first, and the only school I wanted to go to was Texas A&M University. Anyone who had ever known me would tell you that I was not even close enough to being smart enough to go to any college, much less Texas A&M. I would tell you I had never applied myself to the task of learning. Texas A&M denied my application. I called them and pleaded and argued, and finally admissions said that if I came for the summer semester of 4 classes and maintained a B average with no fails, they'd let me in. I did it, barely. I almost failed calculus and got a B. Just a quick thing on Texas A&M, because it relates to World War II, which always makes me think of the Holocaust, and how many Aggies were involved in that. Texas A&M enrollment began on October 2nd, 1876, and admission was limited to white males, and all students were required to participate in the Corps of Cadets and receive military training. Many Aggies served in the military during World War II, with the college producing 20,229 combat troops. Of those, 14,123 Aggies served as officers, more than any other school, and more than the combined total of the United States Naval Academy and the United States Military Academy. During the war, 29 A&M graduates reached the rank of general. Texas A&M is more than a great university. It's the home of the Aggie family with a long history of spirit and tradition. And I'll pass through all that. You can read. I got all this from Wikipedia. Like Notre Dame, it's a school full of tradition, especially notable at football games and in campus life, drinking beer at the Dixie Chicken. I had a good friend in what is now the volunteer Corps of Cadets, and we've been shooting pool and drinking beer all night on the weekend, and finally left sometime after midnight. I walked my friend back to the quad, Corps Cadet Quad, a large open area where people could gather, surrounded on 4 sides by dorms for cadets only. And I dropped him off at his room. Before he shut the door, he looked at me, and not for the first time, said, "Want to race?" He's fast. We race anything. I said, yeah. Of course, we were pretty much, we've had a lot of this. I said, yes. And he went to the end of the hall and took off at the other end of the hall. He was fast, but I was pulling away with just a few yards to go and hit the wall before I could stop and busted my chin open. Blood's pouring out everywhere, people opening doors. Look, that's what the little guy did to the taller guy. Taller guy. I also sprained my ankle. These are my injuries at Texas A&M. I also sprained an ankle so severely playing basketball with football players that I was in a cast for 6 weeks. Those were my only injuries in the 3 years of A&M. It was the gun shop that changed me, everything in my life. I married Denise when I graduated from A&M in '79, just 3 years after graduating high school. I went through in 3 straight years. Because I had those hours from the first summer, I just went ahead and went the next summer too. And I got out, and the average for most A&M students is 5 years. But I went through in 3. And of course that meant I never dropped a class. It also meant I had a low GPA, grade point average. And I didn't realize how important that was for admission to law school. I was denied admissions from every school across the nation I thought I could get into. I do not know how my dad knew about South Texas College of Law in downtown Houston, but he made some inquiries and found out the dean was a graduate of Texas A&M. And we're known for helping each other. We set up an appointment with the dean. I told him of my rather intense home life and wayward ways, and that the A&M had given me a chance to prove myself as a capable student. You know, he hemmed and hawed, looked around the theater, and gave me the same opportunity A&M had. 4 summer classes, D average, and no fails. I did it. I was terrible with chemistry and math, but it turns out I had good reading and comprehension. It's probably from reading all those science fiction books in school. I graduated in '82, and I did great on the bar examination. Keith Ellis McCarty, attorney at law. Who would have believed it? Which reminds me of verse 1 of Isaiah 53. Who can believe what we have heard? That's what any of my friends would say about me getting out of law school. Much less what's happening today. You go find somebody that knew me in high school, they say, who? Oh, that can't be true. Get out of here. I know him. Forget about it. Chapter 5. 27-year headache. I'm going to pick up with that on another video. And then that'll be it. I have some general comments. 5 and 6. I'm not sure what 6 is. Yeah, 27-year headache. I'll go ahead and mention God in one of these actions. And I won't say anything about the dog who took a hard left between my legs. It's about stripping my knee, my leg. I won't mention that. Or hitting the big Swede on the track. Unbeknownst to me, my arm just took off. I wouldn't have hit him with my right arm. The things he is showing me. And getting gut shot. Yeah, I think I would have figured out, you probably shouldn't be hanging out with this fellow anymore if you're going to be talking to his ex-girlfriend in front of me. Little things like that, he controls my perception. Little things like that in my life to make sure I am the man of Isaiah 56. If anybody thinks I'm going to back off saying that, they're wrong. I have been through too much. My whole life is dedicated to this time, the day of the Lord. As a matter of fact, what about my day? I said, what about my day? Well, he said, well, first of all, God's speaking with you and living with you. Most people say that's pretty good. I said, yeah. But anyway, here's something he's promised me that he lets me check out all the time. And I'm going to put on the screen. Debridient GP cycles, shorties, slip-ons, cold startup. 27-year headache. Chapter 5 of the life of God's righteous servant of Isaiah 53. The same year I graduated from law school in 1982, my son Justin was born. In 1985, my daughter Brooke was born. In 1988, my youngest child and daughter, Laura, was born. I was making good money, though I expected a lot more, in my first job with a law firm that specialized in collections. I also tried my first civil case, which, while working there, which was a nerve-wracking event, first trial. The first day I entered the courtroom, the judge asked me if I was a law clerk. I had a very youthful appearance, though I was 28 years old, not 20, common age for a law clerk. My youthful appearance in junior high school and high school with my long, wavy blonde hair I usually kept in a ponytail had way too many people tell me I looked like a girl. It is interesting, though, at least to me, not one person in my entire life has ever said anything about my disfigured arm. I must have looked like a girl who would beat on you if you did. When I got mad, there was no hiding it. You could see it in my face and hear it in my words. When I was 28, Brooke was born. I tried my first civil case, and the bane of my existence on earth began. A never-ending headache that I generally thought to be associated with post-traumatic stress disorder. I had terrible nightmares from my youth, but now I seem to have begun grinding my teeth, causing the temporal mandibular joint, TMJ, to ache terribly during the day, and the whole side of my head, the muscular, I don't know what you call it, but underneath the skin of the skull, was always real tight, a tightening of the muscles. It was difficult to even talk to people at some points. For 27 years I had that headache. I tried everything, even surgery on the TMJ, and another surgery where the doctor severed my upper jaw and then trisected it from my skull and spaced it to fit my lower jaw. All to know that I could not stop the nightmares and the grinding of my teeth. Mouth guards helped my teeth, but the pressure was still there. I literally feared going to sleep. I didn't want to wake up the next day sometimes because I knew how bad the pain would be there again. It completely ended my dream of being a trial lawyer. So I got an associate position in an oil and gas firm and began learning how to prepare title opinions for oil and gas companies on tracts of land they plan to drill on. Basically, a title opinion is you start from sovereignty, which is when the state granted the land to someone, usually great, large tracts of land, and from there you get parceled out and cut up, and I'd be chasing one small tract within a very large one almost 200 years ago in the early 1800s, and I would have to create genealogical charts of heirship, for people who died without a will, and they had to know who the family members were, and I got very good at it, and I really enjoyed it. I did a small towns throughout Texas and into their courthouses where they would keep all the records of every transaction, of every piece of land in the county. But anyway, there's an awful lot to it. I do go into it in some detail in the book, but I'm not going to for this video. Eventually, I had my own firm. It's just me. In my own office, and I was doing very well, though billing hours for title work is generally lower than other areas of the law, by the hour. But I had also been involved in multi-million-dollar sales of production between oil and gas companies, probated wills, prepared affidavits of heirship, worked with landmen to fix title defects, appellate work, including arguments before justices, plea bargaining in criminal cases for defendants, and anything else that came my way. Then it all stopped, and once again I was fighting for my life in 2001. This is chapter 6, skin, colon, and lung cancer. Oh, just God would have me tell you, he gave me those headaches. When he came to me, I stopped having nightmares. He provides my dreams for me now, and often as a learning experience. But the grinding of the teeth, everything stopped, and I thought it was just because I wasn't having nightmares. And took away any symptoms of PTSD, for which I was receiving money from an insurance company for disability, partial disability. And that went on for about 7 years. Then one day we're out walking, year 7 of 13, and I had that headache. It just came. And I just stopped. And I said, "You got to be kidding. You did not give me those headaches." He said, "Yes, I did. It's necessary. You are considered the suffering servant of Isaiah 53. You had to suffer your entire life until you're suitable for my purpose." And that includes sitting every verse of Isaiah 53. At that time, I finally read it, 7 years into all this. It was about year 2, I think. But yeah, he did. And, you know, I ended up taking painkillers left and right and drinking with it, as so many people do. I was able to maintain, you know, my life, my work, and everything, but it was enough to put the strain on my marriage that I pretty much blamed myself for it. And I told him, I did it. This is the only time I got hot. Dysphagia in me, gut shot, those things, they didn't bother me. But I said, you know, you hurt my children terribly with that. Because I became a bad father. I mean, I wasn't the father I could be. I mean, they love me and I love them. We don't have any serious risks. They're off living their lives and they're all doing great. But if they consider themselves anything, they're Christians. And although I don't think any of them are overtly religious, or that they're in church every Sunday or anything like that, but you know, when I started going to the conservative synagogue here in town, and I told him I was converting to be Jewish, they're pretty much just that. Just saying I would be a Jew, I guess. I'm not sure that I didn't believe in Jesus. There's probably more of it, God says. But really haven't talked to them much at all in 7 or 8 years. So, but anyway, so God gave me the headaches, just to make sure. Anyway, I was married to Denise for 18 years, and we divorced in 1997 for irreconcilable differences. We agreed that she maintain custody of the children. The first to leave was Justin, and he came and lived with me. Then Brooke started getting in trouble, who is, as tough as she is beautiful. Her mom's very difficult to get along with. Justin was a lot like me at his age. Trouble followed him everywhere he went. Like me, he was hard to talk to, and like me, his getting out of high school was a coin flip. He's doing great. He learned the oil and gas landman business, and I helped him out as much as I could, and friends of mine helped him out even a lot more. And he's very successful in it. Married, no children. Laura's married, no children. She's got a great job. And Brooke is married with 2 children. I have 2 grandchildren. Long life, fetus children. You'll see what I'm talking about, long life, when I get to lung cancer that God chose to crush me with. Something had to be done, and to make matters worse, Denise had met a man, and they were going to get married. But he didn't want Brooke. to be part of their new family, or Justin for that matter. He wasn't going to go stay with them anyway. Now, I had 2 of the children, and she had 1, but all still in her custody according to the divorce decree. So anyway, I stopped paying child support on those 2. But had not gotten around to the proper revision of the divorce decree when I took Justin and Brooke with me to live on the Big Island, Hawaii. Laura came with us to visit for a month. This oversight on my part resulted in Denise and now her 3rd husband filing papers in divorce court for past child support for all 3 children, for the time I had begun paying her 1/3 of the original amount. I represented myself. I had 1 contempt of court and was locked up for a day, but I never had to pay that money. By verbal agreement, I sent Laura back exactly 1 month later. I could not leave her out, and I wanted her to see where her brother and sister would be living. They were all so close and protective of each other, and still are to this day. And she was so sad. One of the hardest and emotionally painful things I had ever done was put her on the plane back to Houston. I can't think of anything else. The backdrop to moving to Hawaii was my firm was in dire need of new work. But the oil and gas industry was down. It's always up and down. And my clients were not drilling. A landman I knew called and said his sister in Hawaii, a brilliant eye doctor, but not a good businesswoman, needed help resolving creditor issues stemming from her new offices and equipment purchases. I told him it was a good time for me, as things were slow, and who's going to turn that free expense trip to the Big Island, Hawaii. So I went and took care of everything without charge, but of course everything was paid for. When I came back to live in Hawaii at the urging of the doctor that I had helped, who did not like the look of an abrasion on my chest, and it had been there for years, I was examined by a friend of hers, and it was cancer. I don't remember what the doctor called it. He removed it in surgery with a 6-inch diameter circular cut, and it was not malignant. I could practice in just about any area of the law. And all I had to do was pass the Hawaii bar exam, one of the toughest in the nation. While studying for the bar, my body, all at once, in a moment, told me something bad was wrong with me. I had been running, swimming, riding my bike everywhere I went, letting Justin have the car, and had been feeling good and strong. In a moment's time, I was weak and sick while grocery shopping, and there was a pain in my belly and my abdomen. I did not know it, but a large tumor in my colon had burst through my colon, and I was bleeding internally. I did not go to a doctor, which I guess is my nature. That, and I did not have medical insurance. Anyone asking for help, asking anyone for help unless things were at a critical stage, such as a bullet wound, was something I couldn't do. I mean, there's all kinds of personality disorders. I thought surely it would pass, and decided to just give it time and bear up to the abdominal and belly pain. I continued studying and took the Hawaii bar on Oahu and Honolulu in the summer of 2001. I had lived in pain for so many years from my headache, and passing the bar was so important, I just kept going day by day. Pain was getting worse, and but I kept exercising. It's the only time I didn't focus on the pain. I had always been a fast healer, and I thought in any day it would just go away. I finally could no longer take it. Brooke, it turns out, was in Houston visiting with her mom, and I left Justin at our little, we called it the little green shack. There wasn't much to it. We weren't there very often, really, except to sleep. And went to Houston to find a doctor for diagnosis, staying at my parents' townhome, which is where I'm at now. I had allowed my major medical insurance to lapse using premiums for child support when things had gotten lame. I just needed someone to tell me what was wrong. I would find a way to take care of whatever the diagnosis was. Early September, I was close to dying, lying on the floor of a dingy apartment of a friend who traveled for work. I could no longer get up to even try and get medical help. And I had not told anyone how bad it had become. Then the planes hit New York. Seeing how grief-stricken so many relatives were on the news, I began to think for the first time how awful my children would feel when they found out how and where I died all alone. So I asked my father, again, it's hard for me to ask people for things, for the money to pay for a colon examination that had been suggested by a doctor at one of those clinics you find in a strip mall, the only places I could afford. The doctor who performed the colonoscopy finally found what was making me so ill and unable to eat. A malignant tumor 6 to 8 inches long that had burst through my colon and I was bleeding internally. You know, I come out of anesthesia, partial anesthesia, and he's holding this picture, and it's this great big purple blob, and he said, I couldn't get the scope past this. It's not a good way to wake up. To say it crushed me in my life is an understatement. The pain, the weight loss, inability to eat, all I could do was drink calorie drinks. Began about 4 months before the colon examination. That was 4 months of sheer pain. But as it turns out, I did pass the Hawaii bar exam. It was now early October 2001. The doctor told me, look, you don't have insurance. Go to Bentop Hospital. That's the hospital I went to when I got gut shot. Gunshot. I prefer gut shot. Sounds good. Forget it, man. He gave me the picture from the procedure showing what he could not get the scope past. He's shaking his head and saying, you should have come in this early. So I went to Bentop thinking I was here in 75 on October 5, dying. But I did survive, and here I am again on the first week of October 2001. Showed the pictures to the admitting nurse. Instead of them sending me to the waiting room, she just looked at me and she said, Mike, this is a public hospital. I mean, you can wait all day long to have a cold check. She looked at me and said, why did you wait so long? And how are you still alive? And I told her, I have no idea. She did not send me to the waiting room, but had an orderly take me immediately to a room. There they hooked me up to a morphine machine where I could hit a button at a time interval I can no longer remember and receive a small dose. I do know I never missed one. I was very depressed, and my parents who waited in that line for admittance with me looked so sad and depressed. It was not one of my better days, though I finally had some pain relief. Day after day, I lay there waiting for the next test they would run. It was during this time I received notification that Denise had filed papers in the divorce court to recover monies for the time I was taking care of 2 of the children. That's also when I received notification from Hawaii that I had passed the bar exam. So, Bentop Hospital, what a lifesaver. I mean, young surgeons in like Baylor University, medical schools, it's a prime position to get your hands on if you're going to be a surgeon. Because you're in surgery all day long and all night long, as long as you can stand up. They're bringing people in. It's just a real hot spot in Houston and a great hospital. But it's not a place you want to stay. You really don't. My doctor would come in and be out so fast I never knew what was going on. He did tell you my previous surgery to my abdomen, where they opened me up from stem to stern, complicated removal of the tumor. On October 25, my son's birthday, who was now stuck in Hawaii, They cut me open again and removed the tumor. It was about a week or so later, I was released with a schedule for chemotherapy. I returned to the dingy apartment all alone, and I just stared at the television for weeks. I did, and chemo was so depressing for those who had to go into it. A small room with big chairs for about 20 people who all looked like death, including me. Everyone with an assortment of bags of chemo dripping into our arms for hours. It took about 8 hours before I really got sick from it. And I had to park a long way to avoid paying for parking and drive a long way to the apartment. It was a very gloomy fall in winter. When I completed my chemo of once a week for 6 or 9 months, more tests were scheduled. I do not remember how many months the chemo lasted. I do remember I did not finish, missing the last 3 sessions. At the end, I could not get out of the door without bursting into tears and just not go. It just wore me down to nothing. On the right side, it was my goal. I had my own apartment called the Loft. It was brand new and very nice on a bayou close to downtown Houston with a running trail alongside it and lots of woods near Memorial Park where I had been running a 3-mile circuit since high school. I returned to being called for follow-up tests, including x-rays of my chest, and the colon cancer had not returned then and to this day. The chest x-rays were another matter entirely. The doctor told me he had bad news and showed me the x-rays telling me the white spots I was seeing was cancer. They were everywhere. Lungs full of cancer, he said, at a stage I could not be treated with any success. My dad was with me, and I asked the doctor, well, what does that mean? And when he said you need to prepare for death, the look on my father's face was so sad and hurt at the same time I'll never forget. And we've been through some tough things in this house, every house we've been in. It didn't affect me one bit. I did not feel anything. I was too beat down from the chemotherapy repair I did. God tells me I had a lot to do with that. In fact, no matter what they said, I didn't think I was going to die. But I didn't know that. I just wasn't having that conscious thought. And that's what he had a lot to do with it. And of course, he hadn't spoken to me yet. I had never seen a doctor for cancer or any other ailment since that day. I had to get Justin home was all I thought about. But I needed money. I found an old client that needed a towel pin for a drill site well. I struggled through that and got my boy back to Houston. And it was tough. I was so weak. And it had been so long since I really had done any title work. And just going to pick the work up and visiting with the client was the major to-do for me. But we got there and I got Justin home and he went to live with some childhood friends. This is now 2002 and going into 2003. I just walked all over the running trails in a 3-mile loop at Memorial Park and in the woods day after day. I didn't think about dying, but I did start. But I did not think about suicide my law practice either. I watched a lot of television and played video games. I watched the Tour de France for the first time and got inspiration from Lance Armstrong. I was still alive though, and the funny thing was my lungs never bothered me. I was never sick. It's because God had already removed it. After I got the news I was dying of lung cancer, he took them from me. That's what he tells me. And I don't have any symptoms. Well, as you'll see right here, in 2005, I picked up some title work here and there and made an office out of my loft. I bought my first motorcycle, soft-tailed lowrider Harley Davidson. First time in many years I was happy. I love riding that bike. In 2006, I did some landman work for standard day wages and began dieting and running. Once again, my camera only goes for 29 minutes and 59 seconds. And I'm going to back up just a little bit. In 2006, I did some land work for standard day wages and began diving and running. I had never been a swimmer in terms of training for it. I love the water and swimming, but I never trained with laps of different paces and various distances. Mostly because I was so slow, because of my right arm. I was reaching an age, though, where endurance in my running was more important than speed. And so endurance swimming was too. In Hawaii, I had seen the athletes come to Kailua Kona, where we live and where the Ironman triathlon begins and ends. Matter of fact, my little green shack was just right on the route where they start. That was a fun week. It was amazing watching the athletes train and prepare for the race. I would think to myself, a human being, the human body cannot do what they are doing. Yet they were and they did. It's just amazing. I decided to learn how to swim more efficiently and how to train for distance and endurance. Get a regular and triathlon bike and innocent triathlons. I'm still alive and finally a direction and purpose in my life. Training every day for long periods of time. It really helped with my headache and I slept better. In 2007, I signed up for the March 30, 2008 Lone Star Half Iron Triathlon in Galveston, Texas. And the October 5, 2008 Longhorn Ironman 70.3 in Austin, Texas. You cover 70.3 miles, and you got to do it under 8 hours. And I did real well in the first one. As far as my time, it's 7 hours and a little bit, but I barely made it without disqualification in the one in Austin. And it's primarily because of the hills. It's this very hilly area in central Texas, I did. But I did make it, and swore I'd never do another one. But I did it after the first one, too. It's tough. My insurance is still paying for my inability to work, primarily based on the headaches and a diagnosis of PTSD. So I was not working, and I got real serious and trained to swim the 1.2 miles in the ocean, and that would be in Galveston and in a lake in Austin, 56 miles on the bike, and a half marathon, 13.1 mile run. That's what I was able to do with a diagnosis in 2001 of lung cancer that could not even be treated, stage 4. And that's just about impossible. It would take a miracle of God for that to happen, because generally you're going to die within 1 year. They say if you get lucky with good medical treatment, you might make 5 years. But 1 year is standard, if you can make it that long. That's not proof that I offered myself to guilt for God. Because you can't, it's not something provable. All you can do is see the result of that offer. And again, guilt and emotion. I got way too many videos and everything to get too detailed on it. But that is the proof. You know, I got the colon cancer 20 years ago when the planes hit New York. And it's that was 2009, right. Too many things go through my mind when I start thinking about those cancer years. But God, He removed it. He had something for me to do, but that's verse 10. God chose to crush him with the disease. And as I've mentioned, the reason He chose that is to show that I was blemished, defective, could not possibly be an offer for sacrifice, because He knew what the Gentiles were going to do. They were going to put an unblemished lamb in there and call the Jewish people's Bible their own, and use the laws of Leviticus, not unlike Mr. Toby the singer and his 6 million blemished lamb sacrificed by Hitler, the righteous servant of God. How that seems to read. He's welcome to respond any way he wants to do that. But it's on the video, it's in the book, it's in quotes by him from his midrash, from his site. And he said, share this with everybody. Everybody can take it. Just share how great my knowledge is. Well, it's lacking in some areas. The only question, he's an intelligent man, but his reasoning capabilities, in my opinion, at least as to Isaiah 53, are severely wanting. I am that man. And God's going to give the Christians hell with it and with me. Just like I just heard this for the first time on the video. When all of a sudden he had me say that Jesus announced he wasn't the man of Isaiah 53 on the cross when he said, Father, 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 why are you forsaking me? Because he was about to die. And Isaiah 53, who he thought he was, and he's not, he didn't fit the verses, but he thought he was supposed to be exposed to death. They give him long life, so boldly he goes into the Roman Jerusalem and gets himself taken up. He's not worthy. Delusional, yeah, maybe. But as far as I'm concerned, he's nothing but a story. He never existed. And the story starts with the scenes of the Red Sea Scrolls and the teacher of righteousness. Real quick, I'll go over that. Here's the thing. Their founder is called the teacher of righteousness. Okay? They were great followers of Isaiah. They had the great scroll of Isaiah. They're prolific writers and copyists. They had their own gate at Jerusalem. The Essenes gate. Now, the New Testament never mentions them. You got Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, but they never mention an Essene. And Jesus, quite frankly, would have been one of them. Because they embody who he is. They didn't like riches, hated sin. They didn't like material things. They removed themselves from Jerusalem in the most parts of those caves by the Dead Sea for that very reason. But they did have a gate. They still had people who would be there. And you know what they would do at the gates? Tell stories. That's what you do. You tell stories. And it is a great story. Here's this guy who's connected with God. Back then they believed men were gods. Caesar was a god. Over in Egypt, you had the same thing going on. It's a common thought that men could be gods. And this story just springs up. And they didn't even question. They'd have gone and questioned it. I mean, they're sitting right front and center in Jerusalem. You think they didn't hear? This man walking on water, raising the dead, feeding 5,000 with 2 fish and 5 loaves. Turning water to wine. That alone, Rome would have said, Caesar would have said, he does what? He turns water to wine. Bring him to me. Don't touch a hair on his head. You don't kill the man who turns water to wine. You send him out with your armies. Make your men happy. It's there's so many ridiculous aspects to it. Most particularly, God performed a human sacrifice for the sinning Gentiles. He left the sinning Jews for the sinning Gentiles. But he gives them an out, these Gentiles, not his. He gives them an out. I'm going to kill my son for you. So that you'll be forgiven of violating my commandments and laws. If anybody knows God, and the Jews do, and I know him like nobody's business, that's not him. That's not him. I mean, he told the Jews, I'm never going to leave you, but I will punish you. Now, that's him. That's him. And he'll put you through hell just to make you a better person, a better people. And he has no plans to change it, man. He's not going to change the minds and the thinking of billions of people to make them love the Jew. He's just not going to do it. And the practicality is, he didn't create man for him to even be able to do that. Now, he could have created humanity where he could do that. He could change the mind of everybody at the same time. But I'll tell you on this, he's been working on my mind for 13 years. It is one brutal it's a very one-on-one affair. Now, he says, I could just kill everybody. I mean, that's easy enough. That's easy. I could just kill everyone, but He said, that's not, it's all about this. You got to know how to read the Bible. It's written for antiquity first, and the Dark Ages, and then the Age of Enlightenment. I mean, basically he's saying you've got to go back over it. You've got to check these guys. You've got to check Rambam and his speech. God's going to make the world speak Hebrew. Or, they will be the pure speech. You've got to check some of this stuff. And I read Rashi's, I went through his Isaiah 53 main reaction. All I can say is very unimpressed. I've seen what he has to say in Malachi. He didn't pick up on any of this. He didn't know what the angel of the Lord is, the angel of the covenant that you desire. He doesn't know how Moses goes by a burning bush is not consumed. The angel of the Lord is in there, and God speaks. I do. To me, it's just like, well, you just get some basic concepts, and all of a sudden, and quite frankly, it'll open up the scripture to the Jews. They can put the Talmud aside for a little while. But I will say this. God says, if you can study it, study it. There's all kinds of great things in it. Just be real careful about what you teach from it. And it's useful for heaven. If you like to talk about Talmud as a scholar with other Jews who may very well be in scholar remembrance with you, you can meet up with them. Just see them in the meeting places, have them over to your room. Y'all can watch the new earth being created and the new peoples of God chosen, and watch the evolution of the chosen people. And humanity, the same as this one. God says, why would I change it? Why would I change it? When I did it, it was perfect. And you can tell Mr. Singer that the evolution that he's talking about, where all of a sudden the world's going to love the Jews, been going on for over 3,000 years, and it hadn't even, and today anti-Semitism is up, and David is here. It's not going to happen. Thank you very much. I will be doing, is that 5 and 6? Yeah, that was 5 and 6. Now the book picks up at chapter 7. It's on video when God first speaks to me. And it's just very interesting. And we'll still be putting some videos out. But I've pretty much covered all the major material. Everything from Isaiah 53, the day of the word, Lord. There's a few more things. And it's a better read than it is a video watch. But, for those who like to read. But it's covered very well in these videos. And now that I put in the personal part in, which is to show how I said Isaiah 53, and you see the difference in my life. Now that's a life of suffering. That's a life of pain. That's a life of familiar with disease. They said, gee, when he died on the cross, he was scourged. He was scourged, and this and that. Do you know how much he suffered in his life? I mean, he's not even in the conversation as a man of suffering. He's not in the conversation. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people died horrific deaths back then, and by crucifixion. It's not the only one. This is descriptive of a man and his life, so you can find him, identify him. And what did he do? He never suffered. He was never sick, ever, until the last day of his life. 30 years old, he's got one day, but under his belt is pain and suffering. To me, you're not even in the conversation. I mean, that's nothing. That's not being suffering. That's just, you had a bad death, sorry. You got whipped first. You got whipped. One gospel says that the scourging was an open-handed slap to the face. Now, the other three do say scourge. But then and then every movie you see, he's carrying that cross, he's all whooped up and bleeding, this and that. He carries the cross in one gospel only. In the other three, it's carried for him. And then he's on the cross, and what does he do? Father, Father, why are you forsaking me? And then the gospel says, one of them, and then he gave up the ghost. He gave up and died. I laid in the back of the ambulance for 8 hours, doing everything I could in my power to stay alive. Just gave up the ghost. There's another video where we make that a little bit more humorous. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I guess that's it. Thank you. This is a video that leads into a brand new very distinct, not heard from before, commentary on Isaiah 53, which begins actually in Isaiah 52. It's comprised of 7 videos I put together in the last month or so. And I'm just putting them all together with a lead-in video explaining these things and why it's so new, novel, and has such a different view of the scripture from that which Judaism teaches regarding a Messianic era when David comes, the descendant of David. They often refer to him as King Moshiach. Moshiach means the anointed one. And you'll get the idea from the title of this video real quick. God speaks to an atheist. And it began like this. The doctors who gave me 1 month to live from lung cancer in 2002 that developed from my colon cancer metastasizing would have been surprised that I was still alive, to say the least. I had stopped thinking about the lung cancer years before. The white spots in the x-rays that filled my lungs like the stars in the night did not inhibit my breathing or slow me down in any way. At this point in time, I'm training for my first triathlon. And I didn't start small. I did a half Ironman. It's 1.2 miles swimming in an ocean, 55-mile bike ride, and half marathon, 13 miles. They call it the 90.3. One Saturday in the fall of 2007, I was cooking lunch in my small kitchen, post-divorce, and at the stove, when God said, from just a little behind me, as though somebody was speaking to me right here, and above my right shoulder, which is this figure, wash your hands. I turned around to the sink, washed my hands, and turned back to the stove. Now understand, I've been an atheist for 50 years. I mean, I completely denied the existence of God. And then from right here, a small, quiet voice, like an account they have with Elijah at the cave, said, wash your hands. And I simply turned around, washed my hands, and went back to the stove. I didn't say a word to him. I didn't even keep thinking about it. I just did it. That was it. It was as though he had always been there. Just as to Adam. That's what I liken it to. And he dictated this to me. This is from my book, the book of my life that God dictated to me. It's called The Righteous Servant of God of Isaiah 53. No, the life of God's righteous servant of Isaiah 53. And he put it together. And he did it because he actually came to me, as Jeremiah would say, in the womb, but in my first year of life. And like Ezekiel, lit and entered me. So that part of chapter 11 of Isaiah happened well over 62 years ago. That's when that happened. That's when Moshiach was here. For all these rabbis and commentators who have been saying, he's here, no, he's here. Well, he's been here. I've been here a long time. I just wasn't prepared and hadn't even heard his voice yet. But what he did, you know, with Jeremiah, he made sure he was a priestly, godly man and guided his life. With me, it was to make sure I fit every single verse of Isaiah 53 as only I can explain it, what it's for, what it all means, and live a life of suffering familiar with disease. God chose to crush him with disease that he would offer himself for guilt and receive long life to see his children. That's my proof that it happened. They told me 20 years ago, we can't treat this lung cancer. It's too advanced. You're going to die. And you're going to die real soon. You need to prepare for it. And it did crush my life. I stopped work. I just kept waiting to die. And I'm getting dying now. I'm training at this point in 2007. I'm training for a triathlon. I finally said the heck with it all. And that's the proof. Crushed with disease, exposed to death. That's in verse 12. Exposed to death. And here I am, 20 years later, still going. Him seeing a doctor since, never received any treatment, which is unheard of with lung cancer. And had colon cancer before that, and had skin cancer. I'm a man familiar with disease, that God chose to crush the disease. And these 7 videos put together as one, obviously I wouldn't ask or won't, and I couldn't do it. To listen to them all at one time, but I know you can mark your spots and everything. But it was spread out in 7 different videos, and I thought, well, the next video I'll do, I'll have a preamble to it and explain this. This is not fooling around. Once you learn my version, which comes from God, of when Moshiach comes, the day of the Lord, which is left out of the Messianic era. But if you ignore me, God says, as my role as Elijah, God says, when he does return to his temple suddenly, it's going to be with, and it's not there, it's going to be with utter destruction to the land. Okay, all this is explained, so I'm not going to keep going in detail and carry on with God first speaking to me, but it was as what Adam would have felt like. This is natural. I mean, to him, you know, having somebody speaking to him from above him, from up here, from within him, it's perfectly natural. And he wouldn't be falling down in reverence and I'm not worthy and all that. It would just be this person's always talking to him and telling him what to do. The fact that he doesn't see him wouldn't probably enter into his mind. This, you know, this is the natural order of the world for Adam and me, particularly today, 13 years later. Still in God's final refinement, preparing me, and now we have the books, they're unpublished, Jewish publisher, Christian publishers. I dare not even send it to them, because how harsh I am on Jesus Christ, who said he was the man of Isaiah 53. And it's because of him I had to get crushed with cancer. That's what that's all about. God doesn't have to crush you to make you offer yourself for guilt. He just seized Ezekiel and put him through the fire of refinement, the anguish of it, and sent him off to be a prophet to the Assyrian, Babylonian exile, of which he was one, actually. The book of Ezekiel is the key to Isaiah 53. That's my backer. See, God, these videos, everything, the way where he put angel of his presence and Holy Spirit, that Judaism doesn't recognize. A host of the Lord's host. It's in the book of Joshua, one time. He did it so they wouldn't find it. He knew what this was going to be about. These are my proofs. This is what it's all about. He set it up for me to be this controversial. You just got to take the Messianic era of Judaism and toss it out the window. And you'll understand why, when God has me explain it to you, he controls everything I do, think, and say. Finishing preparing lunch and ready to watch a Texas A&M football game, I headed to the living room, and God said, "Get a napkin." I turned back to the kitchen and got a paper towel. Sitting on the couch, from about the same place. Sitting on the couch with the television on and my plate in my lap, God said, "Get your TV tray." I got up, set my TV tray in front of me, and placed my plate on it, began eating and watching the game. That night, I was in bed reading a book. From the doorway, God said, "Tomorrow we're going to Bed Bath & Beyond, the store, to buy a shower curtain, sheets, pillowcases, and shopping journals for things that you need." I said, "Okay." and continue reading my book. That's God spoke to an atheist. That's how it started. We call it the early years now. Talk about it. It was so different from the way things are and all the same in the same breath. And I have since learned this. It was by his power upon my emotions and thoughts that his presence with me was though he had always been there. In other words, when you read in the Hebrew Bible, God calls somebody's name like little Samuel, and he says, here I am. Here I am. Now there's some accounts of people falling to the ground, but he can put a silent knowing to you. He can put knowledge within you, your mind, where you never hear a word from it. In other words, put into your mind the God of all creation is about to speak to you. And he doesn't have to say, stay calm. He controls emotions. He tells me, Keith, I created emotions. And there's nothing I can't do with yours, and believe me, it's been proven to me. I'm not going to get into all that. This story goes on. It turns out he had been like Jeremiah from the womb when he passed by that. I've never been affiliated with any church or synagogue. I've never had any teaching from yeshiva or seminary. Throughout my life, I did not. Let's put it this way. I was the actual opposite of Jesus Christ. Actual opposite. I'm a sinner. You know, I mean, he took me back. He said, look. Yeah, because I said, well, I wasn't that bad of a sinner. I was. He said, still it. He'll go off in vision like the story of Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Past. I started getting smart with him. This is us talking friend to friend. I can talk to him like he's just a buddy sometimes. There is a line I know not to cross. I said, why would you call that a sin? Why is that a sin? He said, Keith, it's a sin. You lied. I said, you did, but if I didn't lie, I was going to jail. He said, but that don't make it good. I said, well, which comes first? Going to saving yourself? Or lying? And so what? I didn't believe in you anyway. I wasn't worried about going to hell either. It's just, I didn't think about this thing. He told me, man, I didn't let you. That's why I was with you from the get-go. He wanted me to be fresh. No preordained, settled in thoughts and beliefs on anything. And of course, I grew up in Texas for the most part, so it would have been Christianity. I didn't associate with anybody who was religious. I didn't even know what the term Jesus meant. I didn't even know that Jesus died for my sins, supposedly, in their theology. And I didn't know that there was a problem between Judaism and Christianity. Jews and Christians. I didn't know that. I had plenty of Jewish friends. You know, I was in the late 60s, 70s, my formative, going into my teen years, and, you know, we treated everybody as an equal. I never thought about it. Including African Americans, who in my day, we just said blacks. I guess it doesn't go anymore. But they're great friends of all kinds. My best friend, I didn't even know he was Jewish until I saw him on Facebook 4 years later. So anyway, let me jump ahead. Okay, this is how God communicates with mankind. This is what the prophets are all about. It's not just Ezekiel, a spirit lit and entered into me. At that moment, God was speaking. And then he says, at that moment, a spirit entered into me, and then I could hear God's words. So he's saying, and that means God is in his spirit. And it's just imagine the presence of God is his mind, and it is composed of elements of the unseen realm that we can't understand, and spirit he created, and the angel of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, he created. But that's completely different elements. His presence is different from God's presence. But they're like big clouds. And they can float together and be as one cloud. Okay, that cloud is what descends upon you. They are within me and without me. If you, this audience, was in a room with me, they would envelop you all around you. You'd be in the presence of God. The difference with me in that room is that that cloud engulfs me, flows through. It's within and without me, as though there's no break because of my physical structure. My little spirit is a little cloud that also drifted in. That's what it is. And it happened with all the prophets. If they spoke God's words, he was talking to them. He was telling them, write this down. Write this down. All these 20 books or so, the books of the prophets. Ezekiel, write this down. Let's set this up. Jeremiah, write this down. See, your time is coming. Well, that's the time in Malachi. It all comes together, and you'll find it in all these videos. So, and it doesn't just include Moses and the prophets. The man who wrestled with Jacob. Jacob says he wrestled with a man in divine being. Well, you know, Judaism doesn't acknowledge the Holy Spirit as a person, which is beyond belief, because there's so many references that this is clearly a person, the angel of his presence. But it's just God going to a man saying, hey, wake up, I'm the God of this land. See this man over here asleep? His name's Jacob. He's got his head on a rock. Go jump on him and start wrestling. Don't worry about it. I'm going to orchestrate the whole thing. You'll be fine. And the guy would have said, here I am, let's go. That's how he does. And Judaism says the man in divine being is an angel. No, you know, that'd be like saying, I'm an angel. And you wouldn't want to say that. Well, you wouldn't want to say it to me before he came to me, because that would make me mad. But I had a hell of a temper, just like Moses did, and like Ezekiel did. And God knows how to knock it out of you, to where you smile and laugh a lot. Because I never used to. No, well, you got to read the book, and you'll get it. You'll get it. And I'm just, you know, just like a lot of people, I've been through too much, hurt too much, suffered too much to have any thought that there's anybody upstairs, you know, who cares about me. It's just don't even mention his name around me. We're either gonna fight or I'm leaving for it, and you'll never see me anymore. No, do that, because it just makes me. All that's gone over. Lots of stories on that. Oh, and the Spirit speaks. He's got his own personality. He's angelic. He has a very childlike voice. And he's just nothing but a ball of humor. He can have me say he's the greatest comedian of all times of the universe. And he's just a joy to talk to him. And he has the smarts of God. But I have instant communication with him. I have instant communication with God. It's like there's three persons in my mind. This one cloud, it's three clouds. It's two spirits and the elements of God's mind. And slow process of 13 years, and there's 13 years of, and this is from Isaiah 53, punishment, wounding, chastisement, maltreatment, crushing, bruising, and I'm telling you, he's relentless. These are the stories, and I have a lot more once I get to Israel, and I have full confidence God's going to get it done. That's one thing I don't worry about. 13 years, a year and a half of trying to get books published, denied by everybody who even bothered to answer me, because it's just so different. And it can only go to Jewish publishers, and it's just like, well, this isn't the stuff we believe, and it sounds like he's saying it's him, and this and that. Well, I was. God said I made sure I didn't get them published. I wanted to do the videos first. You see, I'm not on the executive committee. I don't know what's going on 99% of the time. I don't know what I'm going to have for dinner. I no longer have self-will. I can't ask him for anything. There's all kinds of reasons for that, such as, you know, if one of my kids gets sick and he doesn't heal them up, you know, cancer or something, Am I going to be disappointed? Am I going to be hurt? The answer is no. He's trained me too well to even bother asking. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it. I know he has the knowledge, and he's right here with me. So, it's a long, detailed process. I know things from his perspective. This is another reason the Messianic era is not going to happen. And it comes out in these sins. But the Holy Spirit, the angel of his presence, we're friends. God says, I can't be friends with human beings. I said, well, we're friendly with each other. He said, yes, that's right. I said, God Googled this, and technically you are my friend. He said, well, I know, but I just don't acknowledge it. I said, why? He said, because I'm God. That's what I am. I get to do whatever I want. He's just messing with me. It's just like having a friend. Of course, it's a true statement. He can do whatever he wants. But he's pretty stately and regal. But, again, we live together. I've lived with him for 13 years now. And it's never going to end until I die. I wouldn't even know what to do. And he said, if I left you, you're going to fall down dead. You're not supposed to be alive. I keep you alive. So I took that cancer from you, but I just put it back in if you do something that makes me want to leave. I said, well, what am I going to do? No self-will. To an extent, no self-thought. And I told him, I'm not even a human being anymore. He said, well, what are you? I said, I don't know. I'm a man and divine being, but I'm not human. I don't have self-will. That's what distinguishes you as a human being from an animal. He said, but I'm being a human for you. I'm providing you self-will. So you do, in a way, have it. So you're still a human being. I said, well, I'm dead. He said, why are you dead? I said, because it's like my brain's not connected to my spirit anymore. It's like you're sending all the information in. And that's about heaven. I haven't lived the existence in heaven as to my thoughts, because in heaven you won't have a mind. The heaven for the Jewish people only, I might add. You won't have a mind. God's got to provide it for you. He's got to be you for you as a completely new and different creature. Still you. It's a very amazing story on how that does. And I'm talking all these things and literally experiencing, not only in the real, but in visions. I've had more visions than, if you count every single vision in the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, I've had easily double that. And I'm a walking visual. God's communication, and this actually shows up in the story of Moses, he won't let me tell right now. But he puts images in your mind. Instead of saying a sentence, you get something in your mind, a picture. Anyway, I call it visuals. And you can be wide awake for those. And I can be in vision wide awake. Okay, so we finished our shopping. Shower curtains and everything. And God said, let's go to the bookstore and get you a Tanakh. To which I replied, well, what's the Tanakh? I didn't Hebrew Bible, okay. Well, I know the Holy Bible, the New Testament and Old Testament. And on we go. My son to learn for the first time. At Barnes & Noble, we looked at all the Hebrew Bibles and purchased the Jewish Publication Society's Tanakh, the Holy Scriptures, which is a translation that began in 1956. It was published in 85. And then he spent 30 years on the Leningrad Codex, the oldest Hebrew Bible in existence. They started from scratch. I hear these rabbis and people saying, well, I know what these translations are, this and that, and this, and God says, just go with the JPS. They hit it right just about every single time. I've only found one thing that I don't understand how they miss it. But it's in 53. This is the 1985 edition. That's the best translation you can get out there. And I don't just hear God speak to me. His presence is heavy. And I'm also, it says he pinned Ezekiel's arms behind his back with his cords of power. And by his cords of power, Ezekiel could not leave his house. That's in Isaiah 53. He took him from the land of the living. Took him from society. The man of Isaiah 53 lives, so he's taken from society, but that doesn't, from the land of the living, that doesn't mean he died. And there's no crucifixion in 53. So You start to see how Ezekiel is so important in this. And that's where you find out about the covenants of friendship that come with God in the day of the Lord when Moshiach comes. Again, you don't hear anything about it in this Messianic era. I'll tell you this. I think the Jewish people are going to like this better. I think throwing out all that rubbish Judaism's been teaching from back in antiquity, that's where they're stuck, and see what's really going to happen with God coming back, a man in divine being, with the capabilities of Moses, Elijah, the descendant of David, all their attributes, okay, are in me. I can be each and every one of them, and I can be all four of them at one time. And God can speak to me. So, it's going to be fun, and he wants his temple rebuilt. That's the purpose of Isaiah 53. It says, a purpose which might prosper of God. But he doesn't tell us what the purpose is. Well, we find it in Malachi 3. I'm sending my messenger before me to clear the way for me, and I shall return to my temple suddenly. But the covenant that comes with David says, I'm going to place my sanctuary amongst you. He already knows it's not going to be there. And then we have Elijah in Malachi 3. Well, he's got a purpose that might prosper. And if it doesn't, God comes with utter destruction to the land. And again, you don't hear it with the Messianic era. Utter destruction to the land. There's 7 million Israeli Jews. How can you not read that and go, that sounds an awful lot like, I'm going to raise up armies against you. How can you just ignore that? Well, anyway, we're getting serious stuff. And the purpose that might prosper, I never believed that. I think that just puts the man of the righteous servant of God of 53, I think that puts him with, he's got the same purpose as Elijah. Elijah is supposed to bring the families back together through the laws and teachings God gave Moses, or being mindful of them. That's the new covenant. It's an amendment. It's an amendment that also has a new inclusion of sin forgiveness. Over the last 63 years, God's presence has resided in Texas, Louisiana, Florida, and Hawaii. And he is more than ready to return to his land, Israel. Because wherever I am is where his presence is, and those are all the different states I lived in over this time period. Wherever I go. As a matter of fact, if you see me in Israel down at the old city or down at Tel Aviv, you can turn to your friend and say, hey, I know where God is. I say, really? I thought he left. Some people say he died. I said, no, you see that guy over there? He's all around that guy. And some say inside too. That's what it's going to be like. God said, look at Israel, we're never leaving again. I said, I want to see Great Britain. He said, it's like, did you just ask for something? I'm like, oh. Yeah, that's good. I hope I fry if I hit the border and cross over. I hope I just burn up. Crush in a combustible flame. But anyway, that's where he wants to be. And I'm sure he's going to get there. This purpose that might prosper, again, I think it just shows the purpose of the righteous servant and a purpose of Elijah. Because he knew I was going to be teaching. There's only, in the day of the Lord, as you would imagine, he wants to have all the prophecies fulfilled, be done with the prophecies. And there's only a handful, 4 men to come that we've never seen. The descendant of David, prophet like Moses, Elijah, and of course the righteous servant. We only had one description. Even the sages knew you got to have a description of the descendant of David. It's Isaiah 53. They called him in the Babylonian Talmud the leper scholar. You'll see me referencing it on just about every video. In other words, I'm saying, look, it's not Jesus, it's not the people of Israel it's taught today. It's this guy from the Talmud that just hadn't come yet. You just didn't know, didn't have a name that fit the description. Well, you do now. And two covenants. The friendship covenant, which is actually in two parts, Ezekiel 34 and Ezekiel 37. One part of which is, I'm going to put my sanctuary amongst my people. And the other part, interesting enough, has to do with the land blooming again, which is Jeremiah 31. See, a time is coming, the land will bloom again. See, a time is coming, the cities after desolation of many years, 2,000 plus actually, will be restored and Jerusalem rebuilt. And the Jews shall never be defeated again. Okay, now we just talked about other destruction, likened to armies being raised. But here it is in this friendship covenant, in this, Jerusalem being rebuilt. If that's done, then you'll never be defeated again. So, you look at it and go, well, there's kind of a problem between those two. And what I think it means is he's going to get the temple built now that Jerusalem's been rebuilt and he's come. That this might prosper, because it kind of gets you. So what is the purpose of God might prosper? Who thought you could do everything? And he said, well, in large part, my people got to listen to you. They got, especially the rabbis, they never listen to my prophets. They're all full of themselves, and they know everything. Well, he starts getting angry. And see, that's not good for me, because all of a sudden he wants to make me better, which means suffering. You got to keep them away from those leaders. I feel the spirits. They're going funny. Get the funny guy around here. We talk friend to friend too. Well, anyway, I'm going to let you. There's a lot more, but this story is in my book. Hopefully, after spending time and understanding who I am, and this is here. It's happening. I don't care what the rabbis think or say. Look, I'm a prophet of God. I'm a man in divine things. If I say something contrary to what they think and say and believe, they're wrong. Automatically. It's a given. Because God is telling me all these things. It's his book. They're wrong automatically. And he is livid that I'm having this problem with Isaiah 53 being the people Israel. Well, it's in the videos, but you ought to see the arguments they really put back before that, for Isaiah 53:10. And other verses. Rabbi Tovia Sandra, this Judaism, he went Christian. The Christians went to the laws of Leviticus, animal sacrificial laws, and said Jesus is the unblemished lamb. That's why, and they're using, Leviticus where you could offer a lamb and for unintentional sins, but nevertheless, they turned it into, he was a human sacrifice. Which he says himself. He says, God no longer wants bulls and goats for sin. He prepares my body for sacrifice. He's really sacrifice. And God made the sacrifice to Gentiles so they didn't have to obey his commandments and laws. From an atheist who comes in with no religious background, I read that and I look up face to face with God wherever he is that moment. And I say, you gotta be kidding me. People believe this? He said about 2 billion right now. So I'm not going to bother trying to tell you how many there's been in 2,000 years. God made a human sacrifice to me so I can go to heaven and I can go kill somebody if I want to. I can go beat my wife and my kids. I said Jesus again. God was teaching me the New Testament, and this guy at one of these mega churches came up to me and says, if you do accept Jesus Christ, you're not just forgiven of all sins that you have committed. You're forgiven of every sin you're going to do in the future. I said, really? He said, yes, really. He said, Jesus knows you're going to do it, and he already forgave you. I said, what? Okay. So, if you're a Christian, you can just sin all the time, because Jesus knew you were going to do it. I hadn't actually heard that taught, but that's the effect of it. Okay. This year in Jerusalem. Enjoy the books. Don't try to listen to the video. Don't try to watch them all at one time. But what I did is I put them together for you in the order they should be. And I just thought it'd be easier. And we're kind of coming to the end of our videotaping for a little while, it seems like. Again, I'm not on the executive committee with God and His Spirit. I never really know what we're going to do next. And the books are at keithmccarty.wordpress.com. You can find that on my YouTube channel.